Hi everybody. I am playing today with this little tortoise I sketched here, and before I get started I'm just kind of playing with some of the colors I'm going to use, and I am using my Meed palette because what I'm finding is I gosh darn it, keep switching back and forth to it because it's so large. And my custom palette, which is absolutely beautiful by Miss Ceramics, I love. It's really pretty aesthetically, but it's quite a bit smaller, and I like having these really large mixing areas. As you can hear, it's pretty heavy duty. Let me widen up my camera a bit here. So the colors I'm going to be using, and I might mention I'm using my MeiLiang palette. Mostly I'm using that these days because I'm painting so much. The MeiLiang palette is quite a bit more reasonable, and I really do like their paint. So the colors I'm using are going to be like a sap green. I mix that with a little bit of they call it turkey blue, but I believe it's like the turquoise blue in your Winsor Newton. I'm using, I've also got my two containers of water, one to wash, one to rinse. And I have sprayed all my paints to activate them so they're getting soft. And today I'm going to switch back and forth between these Degatos, which I love. They're great for the beginner because of the price point. And also my very favorite brush, which is the 8 Velvetouch Round. Love that brush. But you get this whole set with the Degatos for pretty reasonable. So I'm going to be focusing on turquoises, blues, greens. I'm playing with the colors here. These yellows, so that's a cad yellow there. And then this beautiful greenish blue, which I just got by taking my turquoise blue and adding in a little bit of green and yellow. You know, really just come up with those colors that appeal to you. Yeah, I like that cad yellow. I'm going to let them all kind of mix in. I might go for a little bit of like a burnt sienna color. So I think those are really beautiful. Maybe a brighter turquoise. Let's see what color that is. So maybe I'll add in a little bit of that. I'm going to be playing with all of these colors. Sometimes I swatch these colors and you know what, it just doesn't feel right in the moment, and so I don't end up using them. Might add in a little bit of gold, yellow ochre in Winsor Newton. Okay, I feel like I want to add a little bit of that Quin Magenta, which you know is my favorite color. And maybe some madder red just to kind of give it a pop. So those are the colors I'll be using. I'm going to be working wet into wet for the most part. So let's go ahead and get started. So here is my turtle. I'm going to try and complete this in 30 minutes for you all. So I'm just going to begin by taking my brush. I've got some water on it, but it's not dripping, okay? It's just creating a very wet, it's very shiny surface. And then what I'm going to do is go on in there and start adding some of these turquoises. And because this is an underwater animal, I really want it to look washy. So I'm going to go in and pick up some of that cad yellow and just kind of have fun with this. Let the colors blend and do what they want to do. So I'll leave that there, and then let's move on to maybe this one. And I don't even mind if normally I don't paint wet on wet right next to each other, but in this case I'm really okay with each of these little sections if they bleed a little bit. So I'm going to go into that one with that same kind of that turquoise blue and maybe some yellow. And just touching in, letting it spread. I'm going to go in with the cad yellow. And again, let it spread. Just playing here. Getting all these wonderful bright blues. And when you're laying down and wetting these areas, just to make sure that you're not creating those puddles. You don't really want the puddles. Like that. And let's go into this one over here. Now another option when I have painted turtles is you can leave a white space between each parts of the shell, or you can go back in and draw on those if you want that little bit of white space. Either way, it looks really nicely. So as you can see, I'm going into that wet and wet. It's giving me a lot of beautiful mixing and spreading. And I'm just applying the paint and then kind of letting it do its thing. And look at how beautiful that is. Oh, now here, this one, I didn't even wet it beforehand. Didn't even think about it. So let me go in and go ahead and do that. Make sure I haven't really got puddles here. And just tap in, let it spread. Wash and rinsing my brush before I pick up each color. And I'm working pretty quickly, which you somewhat have to do when you're working that wet and wet. You want to really work rather quickly because otherwise you don't get the spread. Now I might even go in here and just tap in some water as this is drying, and look at, I think it gives that effect of water, which can be really pretty. Let's just keep going here and add on. Just painting each section of the shell. So I'm wetting it first. And then going in. And just dropping in some paint. Wash and rinse my brush. So see what it did when I dotted it with just plain old water? It gave us this illusion, this effect of, you could also use salt, of kind of these water spots, which can be really pretty. As I go down near the bottom, I think what I will do, oops, let me get that wet first. I think what I'll do is add a little bit more gold in. So these are smaller, so I'm working 3 at a time. So I'm gonna wet all 3 of those. Now see, I got a little bit of a bleed there, but that's okay, and here too. Just kind of dabbing in, and then I think I'm gonna go in with that burnt sienna. I think could be really pretty. And just, again, dabbing in. Maybe just down around the bottom, and then letting that blend. You could even blow on that if you wanted. So let's keep working. Maybe use some gold ochre in this one. So I'm Let me put down that blue. Because this is a sea animal, you can really get washy and not, oops, I want to try that, yellow ochre. So in Winsor Newton, these are basically the same names. That yellow ochre can be quite potent, so just maybe water it down a little bit. Yeah, see how pretty that is, that yellow ochre? I think that's really nice. Look how pretty that is. Just encourage that to blend a little bit. Maybe add some yellow ochre in there. Like that. Okay, let's keep going. I actually had not painted this top shell, so I might make that just a tiny bit lighter. Let's see. Because maybe the top shell is getting a little bit more light on it. And then I'll go in with that yellow. There we go. Look how pretty that is. So again, salt would be really pretty here as well. Wash and rinse my brush. Apply a coat of water just so it has a sheen, no puddles. And then just dripping in that paint and letting it, not getting too specific. I'm really letting the paint determine where it wants to go, what it wants to do, and kind of letting it create that design. So I've got a couple little areas over here. Let's go ahead and go into them. Okay. Add in some of our cad yellow. I really like that gold, that yellow ochre. I think that's really pretty on the turtle. Okay, see how quick we did that? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, I think I'll do his neck, kind of like this bluish color. So now I'm working wet on dry, okay? So I'm going in with a wet brush onto dry, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out some of those edges, kind of feather them out. And then his face, let's put a very watery, light value, just meaning there's a lot of water. I'm being careful picking up this palette because it's heavy and I don't want it crashing and being loud for you all. So I'm just adding a lot of water to that to really get a light value. I need to have a towel maybe under this palette so it's not quite so loud. It's a great palette, but it's definitely heavy duty. And then I'm just gonna go in and put a light wash on his face. Now again, you could get creative here and you could actually take a, oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of it. I want to call it whiteout, but that's not what it is. Masking, and mask out around all these areas. It's kind of up to you. So this is the bottom of his shell, and I'm just going in and adding like this glaze, this yellowish glaze with a little bit of dabbing in some of that gold. I think it's really pretty, like that. There we go. And maybe adding some of our turquoise for some of his little wrinkles, something like that. And let's see, what other color? Let's go ahead and give his little fin here a nice light glaze. So wet paint, but very light wash. Just to give it a little background. So I'm putting this very light glaze. And then I'm going to add in a tiny bit of this sienna. Actually, I think, let's see, what MeiLiang calls it is, yeah, burnt sienna. So I'm going to add in just a little bit of that in the back fin, because I feel like that one might be shadowed. That's too dark. So I washed and rinsed my brush and dried it off a bit. So it looks like it's a little bit darker because it's in the background. I might even go a little bit darker in here. So while it's wet, maybe touch in and let that somewhat spread. I can encourage that by washing, rinsing, patting off my brush, and using that push-pull technique to feather out that edge there. And then we'll go in and add some fun colors to his little scales. Okay, so I quite like that. Let's finish off this back leg here. I'm going to go in again with a light version of that yellow ochre. Yeah, yellow ochre, which they call it in MieLiang palette and Winsor Newton. Really like this color. It's a nice neutral. So just a light glaze. And see how that kind of popped out, and this kind of went back into the background. So I like that. Let's let those dry a tiny bit. And I'm going to go into his face and color in some of those beautiful little scales or whatever those are. I'm just using the tip of my brush and somewhat wet. And I'm not filling them completely in because I want to add in some other colors to them. So I'm very loosely filling these in, just like that. And then I'm going to wash and rinse my brush, pick up some more of that yellow ochre. And I haven't even really used that red. And then dabbing off my brush, I'm going to go in and just kind of let these mix together to create these really beautiful greens and blues. Dabbing into my blue again and maybe just emphasizing some of these little wrinkles on his neck. And I will put this as a $5 download on Etsy if you guys would like this. That spot on his head, I'm going to use this yellow and give it a coating, little glaze job here. And then I'm going to go in with my blue, tap in, something like that. Look how pretty that is. And here, this is the yellow ochre. Do his little nose. Maybe carry a little of that yellow ochre down here. And I know I'm working rather quickly here because when you're working wet and wet, you really need to do that. I'm not going to do a lot of definition in here with these little scales. I might add in some very light value, but I don't want to do too much because I do want that to look like it's kind of back in the background there. And then let's go in and start painting these in, kind of like we did his face. So I'm just dabbing and coloring them in. I'm even letting my paints mix a little on the palette. Now I'll go in, because keep in mind he's underwater, so we want him to be a little bit washy and not get too detailed, because he's underwater, so the detail is going to be hard to see, right? Something like that. Might go in and add just a tiny bit more of that turquoise color, darken it up a little bit. Hold on one second here. Something like that. Maybe use a little bit more of that gold. There we go. And I'm really hoping that a lot of this does wash and mingle and work together. Okay, let's go on to our back leg here. Again, just dabbing and coloring in. Not getting too particular here. Oops, don't want to do that. Stick my hand in there and add in some of that gold, maybe some lemon yellow, and just letting them mix together like that. Okay, now let's see what we want to do with the eye. I think I want to make the eye a dark blue. And I'm going to try and leave that dot in the middle, so there we go. I kind of like that. I think when this dries, I might go in, this might be dry, with that blue. And add in some of that. Maybe my burnt umber. Let that mix in. Maybe just go in under the shell so that it looks like a little bit of a shadow. There we go. And I really like in the past when I did these, I put these little dots in here around his eye, and I kind of liked that. There we go. Just going to put kind of a shadowy glaze here to make it look like that's underneath, and maybe even right here. So it looks a little shadowed. So I think I'm about done. Yeah, I actually quite like this. I think it's just fine. I mean, I can always play a little. Add in some little darks. But I think I'm pretty happy with this. Something like that. Yeah, I think this is good. There you go. Now you can add in a background, or what you could have done. What I could have done in the beginning is just give the whole background a very light wash of maybe blues. Whenever I've done underwater scenes, a lot of times I will do a wash, and then I will sprinkle it with salt to give it these like little bubbles and underwater effect. But I think I'm pretty happy with this, just how it is. So there you go. This was all wet and wet. I used, ended up using pretty much my Degato brush. I'll link those, really great price. I drew him out with my black wing, which I actually lost my little eraser in the end. I love those pencils. And I used my MeiLiang palette. So that was it. I will share my colors. Didn't end up using that red, but that's okay. I actually used a lot of that burnt sienna, which I really liked in here. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I will I'll make a digital download tutorial kit that you can download for $5. Come back. I will share the colors and the drawing, and then you can come back and watch this. Okay, everybody, I hope that was fun, and I will see you all soon. Bye.